I have discussed, talked about, covered, made videos about, whatever phraseology you want to use, the super mayor a lot. Some would say an inordinate amount. Some would say too many videos on the super mayor, and for those of you who would say that, I just want to say, shut up. Shut your face. The super mayor is the golden goose. She has laid the golden egg. She is helping to pay for my wedding, and I'm going to keep covering her as long as she's in office, and maybe in a trial phase, if we're being perfectly honest, because we can't get enough of this particular story, because it's kind of absurd that this woman is still in office. Scandal after scandal, corrupt act after corrupt act, even being voted out in a recall election hasn't stopped this woman, so we gotta talk about it. We have to discuss it, and the reason why is because as entertaining as this woman is, as an outsider, if you're a resident in the village of Dolton, if you're a taxpayer in the Thornton Township or the village of Dolton, you're being absolutely ripped off by this woman, you're being stolen from, and by the way, that extends to the people who work and actually intend on serving in that particular village. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because apparently the money that has been misallocated, that has been taken away from all these different things in order to pay for the super mayor's priorities, is actually costing first responders, firefighters in the village of Dolton quite dearly, because they haven't seen a raise in 4 years, they haven't gotten a new contract, and apparently the village of Dolton might not even be paying their medical insurance bills, leaving firefighters, people who put their lives on the line in this particular village, completely out of luck when they do things like have a child or have a medical emergency or get injured on the job. It's absolutely disgusting and shameful, and we're going to get into this. But before we do, thank you to everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
Well, fireworks at the Dolton Village Board meeting as a village trustee is confronted over sexual assault allegations, and the embattled mayor, Tiffany Henyard, is questioned over tax dollars.
So right off the top, they start summarizing the Village of Dolton board meeting, and if you guys out there in the audience aren't subscribed directly to the Village of Dolton YouTube channel, what are you doing? They do board meetings the first Monday of every month. The fireworks are absolutely crazy. A lot of times, I'm not even pulling clips from the local news anymore. I'm pulling it directly from these board meetings because it's chaos in every possible way, and you see a lot of what the residents actually think of the so-called super mayor. And in this particular instance, we had the story of Trustee Holmes, who actually had to show up and get confronted about his sexual allegations. But that's not even what we're covering today. What we're covering today is the fire department union talking about how they're getting shortchanged on their medical insurance and they haven't received a contract from the super mayor, likely because she's stealing that money for other priorities. Remember, this is a woman who pays absurd amounts of overtime to the police department that she has in her back pocket.
Dolton trustee Brittany Norwood says Henyard began assembling her details shortly after being elected in 2021, using hand-picked Dolton police officers.
She fired the previous police chief and installed a puppet in the village of Dolton, and she pays them excessively with the taxpayer purse, apparently while the firemen are left out to dry.
I'm here today with fellow members of 3766 looking for answers.
Dolton firefighters and their union president confronted Dolton Mayor Tiffany Henyard with a list of questions and grievances. Today, the union president telling me they'd simply had enough.
With everything going on in the village and on the media, at some point we just got to put our foot down and get the answers to the questions that we have.
The 15 full-time Dolton firefighters have been working without a pay raise or a new contract for the past 4 years.
So right here, we have a new hero emerging in the Village of Dolton board meeting, somebody that I haven't seen before, coming up and saying, what the hell is going on, pressing the super mayor, and she obviously was not interested in it. She obviously was not having it. She obviously was upset about it, and this is because likely what is going on is that this woman who is under FBI investigation for, among other possible things, shutting down businesses that don't support her politically, attacking her political opponents, and of course stealing money from the taxpayer, has been shortchanging the fire department ever since she got into office, and that has led to an absolute crisis among these 15 firefighters, who, by the way, not only fight fires, but they also provide emergency medical services in the village, because many of small towns don't have separate paramedics from their firefighters. They perform both roles, but Tiffany Henyard has decided that that's not all that important. What's way more important is her Tahoe. What's way more important is her own personal security. And finally, the firefighters have had enough.
The 15 full-time Dolton firefighters have been working without a pay raise or a new contract for the past 4 years. They worry Dolton isn't paying their insurance premiums because they're getting stuck with big medical bills.
3 members now who have pregnant wives and little ones at home, they're getting health insurance claims denied.
And the firefighters' own money that's deducted from their paychecks for the retirement fund isn't getting deposited.
So just think about that right there. These people are firefighters. These people are dealing with the problems in the village of Dolton. By the way, in various different board meetings, they actually covered fires and all these kind of issues that have broken out, that have been taken care of by these individuals. But what they discover when their wives get pregnant, when they actually have their kids, when they give birth, is the fact that insurance is not covering it. Now, it is standard fare, and by the way, it's actually a part of Illinois state constitution for medical benefits to be very good when you work in the public sector. And the fact of the matter is, with those constitutional requirements in the Illinois state constitution, destroying people's benefits or not delivering on people's benefits is a violation of state law. But it appears that this is also happening in the village of Dolton, but it actually gets worse than their health care not being paid and these people being jobbed with the bills. It turns out that their pension funds are not being funded. And by not being funded, I don't mean they're not taking the money out of these firefighters' accounts. They are. It's just not getting deposited in their retirement accounts. And for those of you who don't understand how this works, if you are a firefighter, if you're in public service, part of the reason why you have a pension that is so solid is because a lot of the times you don't qualify for Social Security. You don't pay the payroll tax. That money ends up going into your own pension. So these people are going to be stuck with nothing by the time that they get old. And it's absolutely horrifying when you think about the fact that the market is relatively up, and had they been investing through the downturn, their retirements would all likely be relatively up.
I just think it's mismanagement. I think there's so much going on that no one can keep up with, like a priority list of what's important.
Now, he says that this is mismanagement, but I don't believe this. I believe that Tiffany A. Henyard is stealing the money from these people. Remember, the guy that's in charge of finances is Keith Freeman, Tiffany Henyard's alleged boyfriend, her right-hand person, not only in the village of Dolton, but in the Thornton Township. And as we covered on this channel, this guy didn't even report to his bankruptcy that he worked at the village of Dolton. He greatly underestimated his own income. He's accused of financial impropriety in his own personal life, so we should not be surprised to see this financial impropriety in terms of government. And now these people are going to be up you-know-what creek without a paddle, and this guy's being kind. He's saying it's mismanagement, it's just a mistake or whatever, but the fact of the matter is, this should be done instantaneously. I do a thing where I set aside a little bit of money each and every month into an investment account, and I don't do that each and every month. I do it on my own. So you would think if you're a government institution and you're paying or allocating funds in order to make sure this money gets invested, that this would not need to be checked in a box each and every month, unless, of course, it was being redirected by the mayor herself or someone in their administration. And that's absolutely horrifying, because where is this money going? What is it being spent on? They're deducting this money for these people's futures. They're working a dangerous job that could result in death or serious injury, and the basics that you can provide to these individuals is covering their health care that they think is going to be covered, or covering their retirement when you're taking the money out of their check.
All this at a time when Mayor Henyard is at the center of a federal corruption investigation looking into spending and contracts.
They're fed up. It's embarrassing. They see what's going on.
Dolton trustee Kiana Belcher says she believes money earmarked for the fire department and the firefighters' insurance and pensions is being misspent by the mayor.
Listen, I agree with this trustee 100%. How many times have we seen basic things that should be paid for by the village of Dolton go completely unpaid, but all of a sudden there's money never approved by the board of trustees going to special projects to support Tiffany A. Henyard? And I know that this is the village of Dolton, but I do want to point out that in Thornton Township, she actually directed $10,000 of their taxpayer money to her own fake charity foundation, the Tiffany A. Henyard Cares Foundation. So it is not surprising to me that this woman would misplace, misuse, misappropriate taxpayer dollars. And it's absolutely crazy that she's under investigation for we don't even know what, and she might be committing this particular crime. Again, especially when you consider that Illinois is a state that definitely goes out of their way to protect union contracts, specifically public sector union contracts, in a way that honestly I think is mostly too broad, too much protection, because it's hard to reform them. But in this particular instance, when you have an agreement that you're going to take these people's money out in order to have it invested for their retirement, this is why you would need some degree of protection. But the mayor seems to be misappropriating that. Maybe it's going to all that overtime for the police.
The officers are paid every 2 weeks, which without overtime is 80 hours. But when they're put on Henyard's detail, that 80 hours balloons to well over 100 hours, sometimes 200 hours. And in the case of Officer Terry Young last May, 303 hours worked over a 2-week period. That resulted in a single paycheck of more than $13,000.
How does a person put in a 2-week pay period, 303 hours? That's impossible. That's impossible.
336
Does he never go to sleep?
In fact, there are 336 hours total in 2 weeks, meaning Young was not being paid for only 33 hours over that period.
Which just goes to show you that the village of Dolton is going to be in a mess, even if this woman was arrested and tried and convicted tomorrow, that they're not going to get out of for years. You don't just make up out of nowhere all these different healthcare payments for your firefighters. You don't just make up out of nowhere all these different retirement payments, not to mention the compound interest that is not being earned right now because that money isn't being invested. So yeah, this trustee, 100% right, in my opinion.
And it's actually affecting their families, their day-to-day life. And that's bad. You go to work every day, you have money taken out your check, and then it's not going to the proper places. That's a concern.
Now look, the trustees have been absolute warriors against the supermayor, so I give them credit where credit is due, but it is more than a concern. It's criminal. Tiffany Henyard may be committing a crime right here, and she should be investigated and prosecuted for it.
In a statement, Dolton Village Manager Keith Freeman says, "We are aware of the several concerns that have been raised concerning health insurance premium payments and the shortage of the deferred compensation payments. We are committed and working tirelessly to remedy the challenges that we share as a village to attempt to make the bargaining members whole again."
Now, what did I say at the beginning of this video? Who did I tell you was managing this particular situation? It's Keith Freeman, the guy who is currently under indictment for bankruptcy fraud for doing basic things like lying about his own income, trying to shield income through a bunch of different shell corporations. Somebody who may be receiving money or is likely receiving money through the village of Dolton and through the Thornton Township through a bunch of different shell companies and taking that money and likely putting it in his pocket. This is the guy saying that they're working to remedy the situation and the discrepancies in their retirement payments and in their healthcare payments, which lets me know that they are likely not making those payments. They are ripping off these firefighters. That money has been stolen. It has likely been used for Tiffany A. Henyard's first-class tickets, lavish travel, 5-star hotels, and all of her meals. So yeah, imagine you serve your community, you become a firefighter, your wife gets pregnant, and all of a sudden your insurance denies your claim for that kid. You end up spending tens of thousands of dollars, all to find out later that Tiffany A. Henyard used your money on self-promotion, a billboard of her across your town, flyers with her face on it, or all these crazy things. It's absolute madness in the village of Dolton, and this is disgusting. It's horrifying.
The Dolton Fire Department is here to serve and protect the residents of the village of Dolton, and we do this with pride. We will continue to serve despite the fact our health insurance is not being paid, our retirement funds are being taken from us, and workers' compensation claims are not being handled properly. These are serious issues, and they need to be addressed and fixed immediately.
So look, I give credit to these people who say they're committed to serve in the village of Dolton. They're not going to walk off the job, even though all of the agreements that they made with the village of Dolton are not being honored by the supermayor. And, you know, I gotta give them credit for that, although no workers' comp in a dangerous job where you could get injured, no health insurance in a dangerous job where you could get injured, and again, for people who are likely starting families or might need something for their family, and no retirement. Again, when you have a short lifespan in this particular career, is an asinine proposal and it should not be acceptable, but the supermayor is so corrupt, this might not even make it the top 10 things that she's an absolute criminal about.
And the firefighters say they have yet one more concern, and that is the size of the fire department itself. They say they're down to 15 full-time members right now, down from about 21 within the past 10 years. No more than 2 full-time firefighters on shift at either of the stations here in Dolton any given time.
Look, unlike the federal government, the village of Dolton cannot print their own money. There's a limit to what they can borrow, and based on the fact that Tiffany Henyard has not been making payments on police vehicles and other municipal vehicles, they're at the point in time where a bunch of contractors are refusing to do work for them unless they get paid upfront in advance. And those problems have effects. They have impacts. And one of those impacts appears to be, at least to me, that the supermayor is stealing money from all these other people's pockets in order to pay off the problems that she's created as a corrupt politician. But it's unacceptable right here, and I hope that the village of Dolton residents do something about it. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think the supermayor is an innocent angel who didn't do nothing? Or do you think that this former criminal, former person who was arrested for breaking into people's cars, is still a criminal as the mayor right now in this very moment? If you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about more corruption from the supermayor. Till next time.